You know that silence, not the peaceful kind, the kind that has a sound, a high-pitched ringing that means something has just broken and it was probably you. That's the sound that filled the conference room after I said it. After I told a room full of VPS in my entire department that the quarterly growth figures, the ones our superstar director, Elijah, was presenting, were a complete fabrication. I didn't scream it, I said it calmly, my voice feeling like it belonged to someone else. And then the world stopped, 12 pairs of eyes all fixed on me, not with curiosity, not with concern, but with a kind of horrified pity, like I'd just stripped naked and started singing the national anthem backwards. Bate, who I'd helped with her kids' science project just last week, looked at me like I'd personally set her house on fire. The CEO, a man who usually looked bored by everything, was staring at me with an unnerving stillness. And Elijah, oh, he played it perfectly. A masterclass, he didn't get angry. He just looked wounded. He slowly put down the laser pointer, his face a mask of profound disappointment. I don't know what to say, he said, his voice laced with a believable tremor of hurt. We all know the pressure has been high, but this is an incredibly serious and baseless accusation. He was so good, so convincing. For a split second, the collective weight of their disbelief almost crushed me. My own mind screamed at me, "What have you done? You're insane. You've just committed career suicide." But I wasn't looking at his face. I was looking at his hand. The one under the polished mahogany table, gripping that ridiculously expensive fountain pen he was so proud of. And it was trembling, not a big, obvious shake. Just a tiny, high-frequency vibration. The kind of tremor that comes from a deep, primal place where the pretense can't hold. It was the tell. It was my anchor in a sea of gaslighting. He knew I was right. The meeting was, of course, immediately adjourned. The HR director, Miss Albright, slid in with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Let's just take a breath, shall we? Why don't you head home for the day, rest up?" The subtext was deafening. "You're hysterical. You're the problem we need to remove from the room." And just like that, I was a ghost, walking out of a room full of people who had already decided I was crazy. But all I could see was that trembling hand. It was the only real thing left. It didn't start with a bang. It started with a whisper, a tiny, nagging feeling in the back of my skull that something was off. For the past 6 months, Elijah's department had been hitting numbers that were not just good, they were flawless. Impossibly flawless. Every quarter, we'd land exactly 1.5 above the most optimistic projection. Not 1.4%, not 1.6%, always 1.5%. It was like watching a bowler get a perfect strike every single time. At first, you're impressed. Then you start to suspect the lane is rigged. I'm the one who reconciles the final reports with the raw data streams. It's a tedious job, the kind of thing that makes your eyes glaze over. But my brain is wired for patterns, and this one was screaming at me, so I started digging. Not during work hours, of course, that would have raised flags. This became my secret, my late-night obsession. After my girlfriend went to sleep, I'd creep back to my home office, the glow of the monitor my only companion, and I'd dive into the server archives. It felt like trying to solve a murder with only receipts. I pulled server logs from the finance terminal, cross-referencing timestamps with Elijah's remote login records. I exported raw sales data from before the reconciliation scripts were run. I spent hours staring at spreadsheets so vast they felt like star charts, looking for a single rogue planet. And then I found it. It was so simple, so elegant in its deception. In the final 2 hours of every fiscal quarter, a batch of high-value sales contracts would be entered into the system. These were real contracts, but they were scheduled for the next quarter. They'd sit in the system just long enough for the automated end-of-quarter reports to run, capturing their value and pushing us over the target. Then, in the quiet pre-dawn hours of the first day of the new quarter, before anyone was even awake, those same entries would be voided and re-entered with their correct dates. It was a ghost in the machine, a temporary fiction that existed for only a few hours but left a permanent lie on the official record. And the only reason I caught it was because of a server maintenance log from 3 months ago. The system had gone down for an unscheduled reboot at 11:58 p.m. on the last day of the quarter. When it came back online, the reversal script hadn't run. The phantom sales were still there the next morning. I remembered the frantic closed-door panic between Elijah and the IT head. At the time, they called it a minor data sync issue. Now I saw it for what it was. They were scrambling to hide the body. That was the moment the whisper became a roar. I wasn't just suspicious anymore. I knew I had the proof. I just never imagined that holding the truth would feel so much like holding a bomb. The day after being sent home was when the real chills set in. It wasn't a loud, dramatic event. It was a series of quiet, deliberate cuts. I tried to log into my work laptop, and a sterile little box popped up. Your account has been temporarily suspended. Please contact HR. Temporarily, it's a funny word. It sounds so much less permanent than fired, but it feels so much more like being in purgatory. I sent a message to our department's group chat, the unofficial one where we share memes and complain about the coffee. Just a simple, hey, anyone know what's going on? The three little dots that show someone is typing appeared next to Bates' name and then vanished. Then they appeared next to Sam's name and vanished. An hour of crushing silence passed. Finally, a single reply from Bate. HR said it's best if we don't discuss it. Hope you're okay. Hope you're okay. It was the corporate equivalent of a get well soon card for a terminal illness you've been accused of faking. I was an outcast, a leper. The entire social fabric of my work life had been vaporized in an instant. Then came the call from Miss Albright. Her voice was syrupy with concern. We've scheduled a formal check-in for this afternoon, she said, just to see how you're doing. The check-in was a masterclass in psychological warfare. We sat in a sterile, windowless room. She didn't mention the data, she didn't mention Elijah, she mentioned my recent late nights. She mentioned the intensity in my recent emails. She brought up a time a month ago when I'd seemed frustrated in a meeting. She circled and circled, never landing, but painting a perfect picture of a man on the verge of a breakdown. We're not here to place blame, she said, folding her hands. We're here to support you. The company has a wonderful employee assistance program, a therapist you can talk to completely confidential. Sometimes the pressure, it just builds up. I felt my throat tighten. I wanted to scream, I'm not stressed, I'm right, but how do you say that without sounding exactly like the unhinged person they're trying to make you out to be? The final nail in the coffin was the email I received from Elijah that evening. The subject line was just checking in. Hey, it read, just wanted to reach out. Yesterday was intense for everyone, no hard feelings on my end. I know this job can get to all of us, I've been there, take the time you need. Your health is the most important thing. We're all here for you when you're ready to come back. It was so kind, so goddamn reasonable. It was a work of art. It painted him as the magnanimous leader and me as the fragile, erratic employee who'd had a public meltdown. Reading it, I could physically feel my own certainty begin to fray at the edges. What if they were right? What if I had just snapped? Did I even see his hand tremble? Or did I just want to see it so badly that my brain invented it? That's the thing about gaslighting. It doesn't just make you doubt others, it makes you doubt the very ground you stand on. Wow, okay, I didn't expect this to get so much attention. My inbox is a mess. Thank you for all the supportive messages, seriously. A lot of you are asking for more specifics on the evidence, the how. You're right, I was a bit vague. It's hard to explain without getting super technical, but here's the gist of it. Elijah was exploiting a system feature, not a bug. Our accounting software has a function called provisional entry staging. It's meant for massive, multi-part deals where you need to log components before the whole thing is finalized. He was using this to stage sales from the next quarter in the final hours of the current one. The system, doing its job, would include these provisional numbers in the automated quarterly performance report. That report is what goes to the board and investors. Then, at like 3 a.m., he'd run a script to void the provisional entries and re-enter them properly with the correct future dates. The report was already generated, the lie was already printed. By the time anyone came into the office, the digital footprints were gone, it was clean. The only reason I have any proof is that I started making my own backups of the raw server logs every night before I left, saved to an encrypted personal drive. It was pure paranoia at first, but now well. Reviewing my own logs, trying to find a way to explain this to a stranger, I just noticed something I'd completely overlooked. Something that feels important. Every time he created one of these phantom data packages, he'd save a temporary backup of the original, unaltered data. Standard procedure. But it was the file name that got me. It was always the same format. For Anya backup mmd.ie. Anya, that's not a project name, it's not a client code. Anya was the name of Elijah's wife. The one who passed away from cancer 2 years ago. He never ever talks about her. Now I'm just sitting here staring at this file name and the whole thing feels so much darker and weirder. This wasn't just about a bonus. There's something else going on here. Staring at the file name for Anya backup felt like finding a key without knowing what door it opened. It was personal. It was obsessive, and my proof, the logs I had on my personal drive, was incomplete. It showed the discrepancy, but it didn't show the pattern. To do that, I needed access to the company's deep archives, specifically the server's recycling bin and deleted file logs, places he'd assumed no one would ever look. But I was locked out, a digital ghost. I was scrolling through my phone contacts, ready to give up when I saw his name, Leo, the IT intern. He was a quiet kid, barely 20, who mostly communicated in shrugs and monosyllables. He was leaving at the end of the month for a better job at a startup. I remembered a few weeks back, he was having a panic attack trying to fix a printer issue before a board meeting. I'd walked over, told him to take a break, and then quietly unplugged the printer and plugged it back in, which of course fixed it. I told him he was a genius and bought him a coffee. It was nothing. It was a total long shot. He had everything to lose, but I was desperate. I sent him a text. Hey Leo, weird question. And feel free to say no, but could you do me a huge favor? He replied almost instantly, they're screwing you over. My heart hammered against my ribs. You know. I saw the logs from the meeting day, he typed. They flagged your account with a behavioral risk tag. It's bullshit. Elijah is a snake. That was more than I'd ever heard him say in person. It turned out Elijah had once publicly berated Leo for a minor server lag, humiliating him in front of the whole department. The kid held a grudge. Sometimes that's all it takes. My request was specific. I didn't ask him to download anything that would trigger security alerts. I just asked him to run a search. A deep-level administrative search on the server's shadow copies and recycling bins for any deleted file, going back 2 years, that contained the word Anya. It's a needle in a digital haystack, I told him. It might not even exist. He just replied, give me an hour. 3 hours later, an email landed in my personal inbox. It was from a throwaway ProtonMail account. The subject line was needle. Attached was a single password-protected zip file. The password he texted me separately was thanks for the coffee. I opened it, and there it was, a list of dozens of deleted files. For Anya backup 33,122. For Anya backup 63,022. For Anya backup 93,022. Quarter after quarter, a perfect damning calendar of his deceit. He hadn't just been doing this for 6 months. He'd been doing it ever since she died. This wasn't just fraud, it was some kind of ritual. And now I had the entire liturgy in my hands. The files sat on my desktop, a glowing blue folder that felt radioactive. I had him cold. The pattern was undeniable, a 2-year trail of digital breadcrumbs that led directly to his door. For a moment, a wave of pure, triumphant adrenaline washed over me. I wanted to spike my laptop like a football, but the feeling evaporated as quickly as it came, replaced by a cold, heavy dread. What now? My options felt like choosing between different ways to be executed. I could go to HR, but that was a joke. They weren't an arbiter of justice. They were the company's immune system, and I was the virus they were trying to eliminate. They would bury this so deep it would come out the other side of the planet. Worse, Leo would be implicated. I couldn't let that happen. I could leak it. Go to a journalist, post it all online, burn the whole place to the ground. The thought was tempting, a fantasy of righteous destruction. But the reality was messy. The company's stock would tank, there would be layoffs. People like Bate, who had a mortgage and 2 kids, would lose their jobs. They had treated me like a pariah, yes, but were they malicious or just scared? Did they deserve to pay for Elijah's sins? The weight of it was crushing. This was no longer just about being right. It was about the fallout. I paced my small apartment for what felt like hours, the proof on my screen mocking me with its clarity. Then a third option began to form, a riskier, more surgical path. I couldn't trust the system, but maybe I could trust one person in it, Julian Croft. He was an independent director on the board, a semi-retired corporate raider from the 80s with a legendary reputation for having zero tolerance for bullshit. He was old school, feared, and supposedly incorruptible. He was also notoriously private. I spent the next 2 hours crafting the package. I put every log, every file, every timestamp onto a clean USB drive. I wrote a 2-page anonymous letter explaining the mechanism of the fraud in the simplest possible terms. No emotion, no personal story, just the facts. I didn't email it. I didn't send it to his office. I found his home address through a public records search. I put it all in a plain padded envelope, addressed it by hand, and drove to a post office in a different town to mail it. It was a Hail Mary, a message in a bottle thrown into a corporate ocean aimed at a single, formidable shark. As the envelope disappeared into the mailing slot, I felt a strange sense of calm. It was out of my hands now. I had done my part. Oh my God, it happened. It actually happened. I don't even know how to process this. An hour ago, a company-wide email went out from the CEO. It was short, sterile, and utterly devastating. Elijah Vance will be leaving the company, effective immediately, to pursue other opportunities. We wish him the best in his future endeavors. To pursue other opportunities. The most brutal phrase in the corporate dictionary. My phone immediately started buzzing with texts from a few former colleagues. Whispers of chaos. A team from corporate audit and the legal department had apparently descended on our floor this morning. They were pulling people into conference rooms one by one. The place is on lockdown. I did it. I actually did it. The victory felt hollow, like I was watching it happen to someone else. Then, about 20 minutes ago, I got a call from an unknown number. It was Miss Albright from HR. Her voice had lost all its syrupy condescension. It was flat, cold, and final. She informed me that my position was being eliminated as part of a departmental restructuring. They had a severance package ready for me, a generous one, contingent on the signing of a comprehensive non-disclosure and non-disparagement agreement. There it was, the cost. They couldn't fire me for being right, but they could sure as hell fire me for how I proved it. I was the inconvenient, messy loose end they needed to snip. The price of the truth was my job. They were paying me to disappear, to become a ghost in the story I had unearthed. I won, but I was also erased. A month has passed. The boxes are mostly packed, a cardboard city rising up in my living room. I'm leaving. There's nothing for me here anymore, just the ghosts of a job I once liked and colleagues who now cross the street to avoid me. The severance was enough to keep me afloat while I figure out what's next, but the NDA I signed was an iron cage. I can never speak of this, not officially. I am the man who knows too much and also knows nothing. The corporate machine ground on. Elijah was gone, a new director was appointed, and from what I hear, the numbers are now painfully, honestly average. The system corrected itself. The cancer was excised. The company survived. I was cleaning out my desk drawer last night, throwing away old pens and forgotten notebooks when my phone buzzed. An unknown number. My first instinct was to ignore it, assuming it was more corporate cleanup, but I answered, silence. Then a single text-to-speech robotic voice. Thank you. We all knew. The message vanished a second later. It was probably from Bate or Sam or one of the others. A small, anonymous act of courage sent from a burner app. A final, whispered admission from the silent majority. I stared out the window at the city lights, the message glowing on my screen. There was no joy in it, no sense of vindication. Just a profound, aching weariness. It's a strange feeling to be proven right and lose everything anyway. They all knew on some level. They just needed someone else to be the one to say it, someone else to pay the price. And that someone was me. The truth came out, but justice feels a lot more complicated than I ever imagined. A lot of people in the DMS are asking if I regret it. It's the big question, isn't it? Would I do it all again? For weeks, the answer was a firm no. The anxiety, the isolation, the feeling of being gaslit by my entire world, it was hell. Losing my job, my reputation, my stability, the cost was immense. It's easy to be a crusader in the movies, but in real life, it just means you end up broke and alone. But then last night I had a dream. I was back in that conference room. The air was thick and cold. Elijah was at the podium, pointing at his perfect charts. I saw his hand under the table, trembling with the force of his lie. And in the dream, I looked away. I said nothing. I let the silence win. I woke up with my heart pounding, drenched in a cold sweat that felt more real than the dream itself. And in that moment, in the quiet darkness of my half-packed apartment, I finally understood. The real cost wasn't losing my job. The real cost would have been sitting in that room day after day, knowing the truth and choosing to be a coward. The real cost is the piece of yourself you lose when you see something wrong and you swallow it. So do I regret it? I don't know, but I know I would regret not doing it a hell of a lot more. Some things, once you see them, you can't unsee. And maybe that's not a curse. Maybe that's the whole point. Thanks for listening, everyone. It helped.